today, huh? Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balava Girivanadari Gopijana Balava Girivanadari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Chamunitira Vanatari Chamunatira Vanatari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balava Girivanadari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanatari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Boom. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Boom. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pari Vijayacharya Siddhishesham in His Divine Grace Abhaya and Bhakti Vedanta Sai Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Kodavaishya Vrinda Ki. Namacharya Sahidas Thakur Ki. Prem Shikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadara Shiva Sari Go Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Say Sri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki. Vrindavan Dham Ki. Mathura Dham Ki. Dwarka Dham Ki. Navari Dham Ki. Jagannathpuri Dham Ki. Jamuna Mai Ki. Ganga Mai Ki. Tulsi Maharani Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Sambhita Bhakti Vinda Ki. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Sri Radha Giridhari Ki. Shri Krishna Sankirtana Jiga Ki. Gopremanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Divine Little Sita, Sri Guru and Gauranga. So, Mani, can you help with this? Yeah. We are finishing up today these, well, I guess I should say it in the mic. All right, fire away. Thank you. No, thanks. Thanks for Hare Krishna. You know, this garland is not for me. This garland is coming from Srila Prabhupada, and it's out of respect for the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavatam message. It's given to the speaker who's representing Vyasadeva. It's nothing to do with me. It's just out of respect for the Bhagavatam, and that's the actual status of the thing. So, as I was saying, we were talking about the causes of suffering, and we're talking about personal, internal anger, frustration, loneliness, all the existential internal struggles in the heart, and how to deal with them, and what is our Vaishnava answer. And we quoted the verse by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chanadapi Sunichena, Tororeva Sihishnuna, Amanina Manadena, Kirtaniya Sadahadi, which for one who feels lower than the straw in the street, more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, ready to offer all respects to others, while not expecting any respect for himself, such a person can chant the holy name of the Lord continually, constantly. So we're breaking down those individual lines of that verse, and we're also, okay, we were talking about, well, I'll just make it short, prayojana, or the fruit of the thing. Okay, so if I do all those things, lower than the straw in the street, more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, ready to offer all respects to others. What's the fruit? To be absorbed in the chanting of the holy name? Well, so what? What does that do for me? All the effort, then the fruit, but what is that prayojana? What is the benefit of that fruit of being absorbed in the holy name? So that's the layout, and we're about halfway through. And we'll pick up now. And I did remember, just in case we need it, I have my laser pointer. Okay, so next. Ready to offer all respects to others while expecting no respect for oneself. So that's the next section. Okay, next. So mundane pride, you see this pratishta. This is the desire to be glorified and praised by others. Now, on one hand, we want to be appreciated. It's not that we were talking earlier about low self-esteem, but there's two aspects of this. And the Bhagavatam is blunt, so I'm sorry that there's a story from one of the Puranas that's mentioned in the Bhagavatam, and it talks about a jackal who falls in a vat of colored dye. The jackal becomes dyed purple. Now, a jackal in the hierarchy of forest life is not considered very prominent. You've got tigers, you've got lions. Lion is the king of the jungle, and all that. Tiger's the king of the jungle. So, jackal is sort of a scavenger. It doesn't have a very respected position in the hierarchy of jungle life. But this jackal, because he was scavenging in town, slipped off a wall and fell in a vat of dye, was purple. And he was feeling pretty bummed about it when he went back to the forest. The animals had never seen a purple jackal. And this is like seeing a unicorn or something, So they were offering him all respect. And, they put him on a throne, and he was, So, but who cares for the praise of other animals? There was our dog here, Roscoe, down the street, who used to always bark at all the devotees, scare the wits out of them. So did our devotees go into therapy that the dog doesn't like them, and maybe they should get a dog costume and go on all fours and try to bond with Roscoe? I mean, he's a dog. Dogs do so many stupid things. Who cares what a dog thinks? So, although just as a sidelight, the devotees started giving the dog regularly prasadam. And he became completely pacified, completely peaceful, so much so that the owner of the dog came down and said, "You've ruined my dog. He's no good as a guard dog anymore. He just barks. He doesn't bark anymore. He's become a pacifist dog. You've ruined him." I said, "What can we do?" We changed his heart. But the point is that on one hand, what does it mean that if a fool praises another fool, does that really have that much wealth or value? So we have to step back, and we want to be appreciated. We want to please those who actually know who is who and what is the status of this world, who know Sat, who know what the truth is. What is it? Tadvadi panipatena paripashnina sevaya upadikshanti tegena jnanivas tattva darshanaha. That you approach a saintly person because they know what the truth is. They've seen the truth. So that, we want to please those people, yeah. But, okay, so that's one aspect. The other thing I looked at the definition of, in Oxford, where else? But the definition of the word pride. It says arrogant, disdainful conduct, haughtiness, conceit, condescending, excessively high opinion of self. So this is and it's actually a great burden, because to tell the truth, Prabhupada said we're being kicked like a football, and he means American soccer. Soccer. That we're being knocked from pillar to post by the modes of nature, by what can we control? So we'll get into that in a second. But so trying to maintain that arrogant, disdainful position and condescending to others, when, time alone will devastate this body, become old and enfeebled. My father was a good man and passed away. He got a new phone. He got a cell phone. My son, that was it. My son got a new cell phone. and wanted and said, "Hey, Gramps," they were close. He said, "Hey, Gramps, here's my number." My father dutifully got out a pen and started to write it down. My son said, "Come on, Gramps." I mean, he was a smart guy. He said, "Just memorize it." My father said, No. He was 80 at that time. He said, "At my age, anything I memorize, it's going to push something out." He said, "I'll remember your phone number, but I'll forget my Social Security number." He said, No. At this stage, I just keep what I've got and I add to it by writing down, So old age is it's a good thing on one hand, but it's very humbling. So we're all worn down by time. We're all worn down by the factors and yet we're just arrogant and proud. So you see this, our fellow over here, it's a great burden carrying around pride okay, so next. And pride often leads to offensives. When we're arrogant, it said condescending nature, especially in spiritual life, if we treat other Vaishnavas, other living entities roughly, cruelly, there's a reaction. Just like, manslaughter is if you kill someone by accident, and then first degree is if there's premeditation. If you know it's wrong and you still do it, then there's a higher reaction. So similarly, if we, Vaishnavas, devotees, we know that we're Pandita Samadarshana, you're supposed to see everyone as equal. And if we're arrogant and lord it over others, there's a heavy reaction. Our heart becomes very hard. That one of the results of offensives to others is the heart becomes hard. It can't feel the finer sentiments of compassion and empathy. So we don't want to be in that box. This is, of course, this Lord Indra, with his pride, offended Krishna. Couldn't understand that Krishna you appear as a small cowherd boy in Vrindavan. And he tried to steal Krishna's cows and cowherd boys, got himself into a whole pile of trouble. So pride leads to problems. Next. And what do we have to be proud about? This is a representation of the Supersoul. It's described in Katha Upanishad. There's two birds in a tree. And one is enjoying the fruit and flying from tree to tree trying to find different fruit. And the other bird is just the witness, just accompanying him. So the comparison is in this body there's the soul, the Atma, and there's the Paramatma, which is the Supreme Lord. There's the Supreme Soul, the knower of all, in everyone's heart. So Krishna, and Krishna says in the Gita that I am the ability in all. Krishna's the one who, we can't even, involuntary muscles? They've done you would know, there's studies on the brain, and one has the desire, and there's a millisecond, whatever it is, time lag before it actually is carried out. I mean, there's so many involuntary muscles. Imagine if you had to consciously think about everything that's going on. I'm trying to speak. I got to breathe at the same time. I'm moving my... So in so many ways, Krishna as the super soul is actually doing everything. You ever had the experience? I mean, within a second. I was giving a class one time. I was even more proud than I am now. Hard to believe, but true. And I was speaking, this was many, many years ago. And I was thinking, I'm speaking very nicely. And these college students are listening very nicely. I was sitting on an asana, like this one over here. And so they just passed through my mind. And I stood up to say something. The class was over and I stood up and I completely collapsed on the ground. Both legs had fallen asleep and I didn't realize it. And I was just like a puppet. You cut the strings, I couldn't even move. So within a second, I'd lost the ability to even walk. Within a second, you have an aneurysm, you have a stroke, you lose everything. So the fact of the matter is we're proud of, I'm good at this, or I'm good at... Really, that's a gift from Krishna. And Krishna's the ability. Krishna says in the Gita, I am the ability in all. So what do we have to be proud about? Krishna's giving us a little ability. He can give and he can take away. Okay, next. So another aspect of reducing pride and offering respects to others, Prabhupada said we should always try to see the good in others. Even there's a little spark. You try to see and you fan it, just like we have the bellows here, and it's fanning the embers, and they'll come into a fire. So rather than being absorbed and thinking how wonderful we are, what we should be doing is trying to see the good in others and fanning that spark in others. That will reduce pride. Next. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, I love this picture. He is the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement. And when asked about this, how do you cure the tendency towards pride? Because we all have it. He said you should try to serve 10 Vaishnavas a day. And even it's a small thing, save them a little prasadam, get them a cushion when they go to sit down, or hold the door open for them, whatever. To say, oh, I'll wash the pots, don't worry about it, go ahead. So that if we consciously try to serve, and he gave a number, 10 Vaishnavas a day, that will also help reduce pride. The Gaudiya Math, that was the name of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's mission, they used, because he was a renowned scholar, he used to get big professors and sons of big Maharajas would join. First thing you would have them do, anyone know? They had to clean the bathrooms. He made them clean the bathrooms. Because and wash pots. And that reduces our pride. And I saw a bumper sticker, it's that famous one I've seen multiple times. The one who dies with the most toys wins. Like it's all a race, how much you can, Forbes with the top, whatever it is, 100, individuals. They interviewed one of the guys, that's what he told me. And I saw he sent me the article. And he says, really, it's not the amount, after a certain point, it's not the amount of money you've got, because you've got so much you can never use it all. It's just how you keep score. Well, he's got more than me, I've got more than him. But so, in the same mood, the one who dies with the most toys wins. What's the fallacy in that? There's many fallacies, but the one who dies, you die. Where do the toys go? Can't take it with you. It goes to all the dimwit relatives that you forgot to cross out of your will. So what do you really own or have? That's just truth. Okay, next. So now we've moved on to the next. So those were the precursors. If we do these things, what is the fruit? In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Okay, well, let's flesh that out a bit. So what? What is that? What do I have if I do that? Next. Not that that should be our motive, but go ahead. So I have a question for you. Of course, here we see the average mind. What is the attention spirit as point of the average? I forget what it is. Attention span. Attention span, yeah. And it's even shorter in teenagers. And they did a study that they took people's cell phones away. I think it was for 48 hours. And they did all the biometrics on them. And they had the same symptoms of withdrawing from heroin. The heart rate, the eye movement. They were like going cold turkey without their phone. So, this is the average state. It's agitated by so many things. And here we have a nice, saintly, peaceful Vaishnava thinking of the welfare of others. So happiness there's an option. It's based on conditions or it's based on consciousness. If one's happiness depends on conditions, and a priori, by just a law of friction, Krishna says in the Gita, the material nature is constantly mutable. If our happiness is based on material conditions, and by very definition, conditions are always changing and shifting, what does that say for our state of happiness? It's always flickering. You can't hold on to it. It's like like the Buddhists say, you can't bathe in the same river twice. It's a river of names only, Bhagavatam says. So if our happiness is based on conditions, there's nothing we can really do. We're not saying don't do anything and just, but ultimately, how many factors can we juggle? And time will move things on. But and we don't have, if we have Krishna says in the Gita, like so many rivers entering into the ocean, and the ocean remains steady. The sources of agitation are going to come. But the analogy is one who is in higher consciousness. There's all kinds of waves on the Nectar Devotion. Rupa Goswami says there's all kinds of ripples and white caps on the top of the ocean, right? You see it a stormy day. But if you go deep down into the ocean, it's completely stable. It's not affected by what's happening on the surface. So one who's deep in consciousness, we do not have control over conditions. Just, we should face up to it. But we do have control over how we react to conditions. See the difference? We can't control the conditions, but we can control how we react to them. So really, if we want to have a steady state of happiness, it does not depend on getting as many toys as possible, or getting at the top of Forbes, or, you know, dumping this wife or dumping that husband and getting in. No, it's got nothing to do with it. Getting Botox and trying to, I don't know, whatever it is, that's not it. It's consciousness that's going to determine our state of happiness. Okay, next. And that peace and shelter, because we're talking about what is the benefit of being able to chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. The sources of shelter, or ashraya, are a stable state of happiness. You know, people talk about go mentally to your happy place. You know, in your 15-minute meditation when you're stressed out at the office, they have a quiet corner that you sit and go to your happy place. But a Vaishnava, a devotee of the Lord, that happy place is within our heart. It comes from remembering Krishna and from serving Krishna. That is always available. A devotee is constantly absorbed. There's a story that Prabhupada told about asking, someone was asking, why is Arjuna considered one of your greatest of devotees? Krishna took the person, Prabhupada told the story, into Arjuna's room where Arjuna was sleeping, and in his sleep he was chanting. And we have what to speak of Srimati Radharani or the gopis, the residents of Vrindavan. They're completely absorbed in Krishna. I've seen devotees lying flat on their back, if they're a pujari, and offer arti in the knee. I've seen it. Their hand is going like this, and their other hand's going like this. What's going on? In their sleep. What's Giridhari Priya, what's going on? Yeah. They're ringing the bell, they're offering. I've seen devotees distribute books in their sleep. It's the fiber of their being. So those shelters, chanting the holy name, reading Shastra, serving, they're always available. It doesn't depend on any condition. Next. The first temple they opened in Berlin, in Germany, was, I can't remember the devotee's name. He lived here for a while. Anyway, it'll come back to me later on. It was a bombed out building. The back half was blown out. He said, we got plenty of room if we get a large crowd. That's where the first temple in Canada was in Montreal, was in a bowling alley. I was mentioning this building used to be an army barracks. It was a factory. It was a movie theater. It was an Elks Lodge. So it's consciousness and how it's utilized. One of the first things I asked Srila Prabhupada is, what is the difference between matter and spirit? Because I was thinking, that, okay, matter has to be avoided and we want to be absorbed in that which is spiritual. Although I didn't really know what the definition of spiritual was. And Prabhupada was cutting some fruit. It was after a Gita class, and he was cutting up an apple to distribute. So, in my own little shy, foolish way, I asked the question, what is the difference between matter and spirit? And Prabhupada held up a knife, the knife he was cutting the fruit. He said, is this knife material or spiritual? At which point my mind blanked. My brain froze. I didn't know what to say. Prabhupada said, this knife in the hand of a robber can take your life. Same knife in the hand of a doctor can save your life. So is the knife good or bad? It's neutral. It depends on the consciousness in which it's utilized. Similarly with this world. It's not profane, or it's not made for us to enjoy. As we were saying the other day, why isn't it more enjoyable then? But the secret is how it's used. So if one develops humility, develops tolerance, develops respect for others, then one can be absorbed in the holy name because he's not distracted by all these things. And one tastes that peaceful, permanent state of Ramabhuta Prasanatma, na sojate na kanchate, free from hankering, free from anxiety, and tasting the satisfaction of the self in connection with Krishna. Next. Oh, the power of chanting without offense. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhyali, it talks about the Krishna Surya, the rising sun of Krishna within the heart. The holy name, we'll talk about that more in a second. The holy name is considered, and Krishna is considered apapavidyam. Apapavidyam means pure and antiseptic. And the example is given is the sun. Anyone other than Dravida know why the sun is given example of something pure and antiseptic other than Dravida? Going once? Going twice? Dravida!
Because you have some good place on the ground, say some gold pasture, the sun can shine on that and purify it and doesn't become...
The sun never becomes contaminated. Rather, anything it shines on, given enough time, will become purified. Prabhupada points, you have a latrine, your sun shines on it long enough, assuming people aren't still using it, then it becomes it can be pure. It's only a matter of time. So similarly, we have so many anarthas, unwanted things in our heart, but if we're sincerely chanting the holy name, it's antiseptic. It actually, Prabhupada says, you put an iron rod in the fire, you leave it in the fire long enough, it becomes red hot. It becomes just like fire. It has heat and light. So the power of the holy name, we cannot underestimate the power of the holy name, chanted properly. Next. Oh, Chaita Darpana Marjanam. That pure, I have to fix the Sanskrit. Pure chanting cleans the heart like the sun burns away fog. You can't fan the fauna, you can't blow the fog away, you can't. But as soon as the sun comes out, it just burns off. Next. Oh, again, we're talking about the benefit. If one's absorbed in the holy name, the sweetness of a Vaishnava's vision, there's always going to be three categories of people. You know, it's a general categorization. There's always going to be people less fortunate than us. There's always going to be people on a par with us. There's always going to be people more fortunate. There's always going to be people that are not, as quick as us. There's going to be people the same intellectual level, and there's always going to be people smarter than us. So how do we deal with those three categories? Lesser, equal, and superior. Now a materialist, if someone is lesser, what do? Oh, they exploit them as far as possible. Belittle them, exploit them, take advantage of them. If someone's equal, then they compete. Tear them down, compete, whatever it is. And if someone is superior, in a superior position, because we're all equal spiritually, but on a superior position materially, we're envious. So, but how does a Vaishnava, the same three categories, we're again talking about, it's not conditions, it's consciousness. How does a Vaishnava see? Someone who's in a lesser position, less fortunate? Devotees are merciful. Give them prasadam, give them good instruction, help them. Devotees that's the very nature of a Vaishnava, is compassion. So, we're compassionate, and someone who's on the same level with us, we make friendship. And someone who's superior, we serve and hear from. So we have a choice. We can live in a world where we're exploitative, competing, and envious, or we can live in a world where we are compassionate, we have friendships, and we take good advice, and we offer respects. It's our choice which kind of world we live in. Next. So what is the ripened fruit of offenseless chanting? Just like a mango, green mango, ripe mango, the only difference is time. So as long as it stays connected to the tree. So if we follow the process as outlined or summarized by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this initial verse or sutra, then what is the fruit? We've been talking about that. Next. This is the actual stage that we're meant to come to. I remember Rabindra Swarup Prabhu saying, and I'm sure you've all had similar experience. You know, if you're inquiring, if you're an intelligent person, well, this world is not, you know, just getting on the conveyor belt and running. We'll get in that in a second. Well, I remember reading books about Christian mystics. They get stigmata, they can levitate, they can appear in different places. It's in every tradition. I remember reading about yogis in the Himalayas and, you know. And they were always very elevated states far beyond my abilities. Okay, it was a nice theory, but, you know, I was a foolish student in Southern California. You know, I'm not going to go off and live in the Himalayas on one chickpea a day in a cave. It's not going to happen. So what is my hope? But then when we saw Srila Prabhupada, this is a Vrinda's statement, and it's quite accurate. When we saw Srila Prabhupada, we could understand, well, hang on a minute. Here's someone who's completely, obviously on the highest level of consciousness and completely practical and moving within the world. Not only that, he was saying, come on, you too, here's how you do it. Okay, well, Prabhupada's not physically with us, but there's so many saintly Vaishnavas. And they're saying, come on, this is how you do it. Just follow me. Come on. And we do it, and lo and behold, it works. Next. Oh, so I wanted to read this. So this is we're talking about the fruit of these precursors. The fruit is to be absorbed in pure chanting. Well, what's the fruit of that? This is Rupa Goswami. I do not know how much nectar the two syllables Krishna have produced. When the holy name of Krishna is chanted, it appears to dance within my mouth. We then desire many, many mouths. When the name enters the holes of the ears, we desire many millions of ears. And when the holy name dances in the courtyard of the heart, it conquers the activities of the mind, and therefore all the senses become inert. What a state. Next. So I desire many millions of mouths and ears. So here's a tip to be absorbed in the chanting, to concentrate on saying it clearly. It's so simple, like E equals MC squared. I mean, it's a very, very simple equation. You really couldn't get much more simple. But it unpacks the nuclear power. So just to concentrate on hearing the holy name, not on a clicker, not when you're driving your car, not when you're thinking about what's for breakfast, but to carve out a little time to just hear the holy name and to concentrate on hearing, speaking clearly. Prabhupada said, not this snicka snicka ram ram, snicka snicka ram ram. You know, to hear, to speak clearly and hear. And we have, as one of the offenses, inattention. I was reading the other day, and Prabhupada, I was looking at the different ways Prabhupada lays out those 10 offenses, and he breaks down inattention. And he says, Prabhupada says it means to chant without love and respect. If you're inattentive, you're not really caring about it. You know, you're chanting while you're walking the traffic go by, or, oh, she has a nice sari, you know, whatever's going on. But if we're actually love the holy name, and we're actually serious, and we understand its potential, then that's to love and respect the holy name and to chant in that mindset. That's an explanation of what inattentive chanting is. Okay, next. The mind becomes conquered and the senses become inert. It's the highest perfection of yoga. You know, people chant, they stare on a dot on the wall, or what's the sound of one hand clapping. I met a guy one time, I had samadhi on a Coke bottle. Which means, you know, he was meditating on a Coke bottle and he cut out all other sense, you know, distractions. Well, so what? But the mind becomes conquered and the senses become inert. If I have a number line, I got all the negative numbers, I've got 0, right? So, okay, I come to the point of 0. Buddhism is like this. I come to the point of no karma, no activity, no desires, no distractions, no thought. Nirvana, finished with work. They give the example, it's like a bubble comes up and then pops and merges with the atmosphere. Sounds romantic. Okay, that's negative come to 0. But is that the full spectrum of a number line? No? Why? What else is there? There's the whole positive side. So to come to 0, okay, that's good. But you really can't sustain it because the nature of the living being is desire. Unless you learn positive desire, positive activity, you can't sustain that 0 status. So it's the being absorbed in tasting, as we were reading from Rupa Goswami, tasting and relishing, seeing Krishna in His holy name, experiencing Krishna in His holy name, then we become, all the other sense distractions fall away. It is perfect samadhi. Okay, next. To elaborate on that. I just look at this picture of Prabhupada. Is he relishing the holy name? What do you think? Giriraj Maharaj's father, no, it was his uncle. Giriraj Maharaj's uncle met Prabhupada, and Giriraj Maharaj's father was a big judge, a federal court judge in Chicago. And his brother, the uncle, was some other big something, you know. And but he was so impressed by Prabhupada, he asked Giriraj Maharaj, he said, can you get me I want a picture of his face. I want to remember that face. So here you see, you know, this is the result. I don't want to take up, what time is it? I can't see that thing. It doesn't do me any good. All right, we got a few more minutes. So the analogy, of course, is that the senses, the example Krishna gives in the Gita. Oh, it'll do. Yeah, you can fix it. Thanks. Is that the body's like a carriage, the senses are like the horses, the reins are like the mind, the intelligence is like the driver, and we're just the passenger. So, well, to break it down a little further, because we've got some guests, the senses pull us out in this world. We're hearing, we're smelling, they pull us out into the world. They're like the horses pulling us forward. The body, of course, is like the chariot. The mind is like the reins, because the mind is getting the impulses from the reins get the impulses from the horses and direct. Which way? Oh, we're going this way. No, go this way. Go there. They're directing. So what happens is the senses send back impulses. Here's what's happening. Here's what's happening out in the world. And the mind puts those into packages. Okay, you're feeling this, you're sensing that, you remember this in the past. So here's what's going on. And it puts those into different options, different packages, so to speak, which one to click on. And then the intelligence says, oh, okay, I remember that, I want this, I don't want to go that way, I want to go this way. The intelligence chooses. That's the driver. And we're just the passenger. So if the horses, here you see, this is a cliff, I don't know if you can see, this is a cliff. This is the horses are wild. We've all seen enough cowboy movies when the stagecoach is out of control or whatever it is, you know. And here's the driver. He's lost control. And here's the little jiva, the passenger. Oh, help me, help me. So if one's deep thought and peace, when the mind is conquered and the senses are inert, that's the fruit of the holy name. We're not just madly barreling down the road of life. Next. So then one always lives in Vrindavan. That's the statement of Rupa Goswami. So that's our choice. Next, we're almost done. What a pure devotee sees in the heart, because we're talking about what is the fruit of pure chanting of the holy name. If we follow, more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, humbler than the blade of grass. If we do these things, we will come to the point of being absorbed in the holy name. All right then, we've been unpacking that. What do we experience? So what does a pure devotee see in his heart? What is the perfection of that meditation? Next. Those fortunate souls dwelling in the forests of the Himalayas may have their heart overflowing with joy from absorption in the Supersoul, seeing Krishna inside all things, in every atom and in my heart. Okay, it's pretty good. You know, you're going to check that box, take what's behind that curtain, or you're going to see what's behind the other curtain. Next. But as far as I am concerned, I only desire to see within my heart the frolics of a cowherd boy whose complexion is more brilliant than a blue sapphire, who embodies the love of the gopis and who sports in Vrindavan with that nary a care. That's what a pure devotee sees in their heart. This is from Ishwar Puri, and it's from Srila Rupa Goswami's Padyavali. This is what a devotee sees in the core of their heart. Next. So we need to take these instructions seriously if we want to taste the holy name. We can skim along the service, Prabhupada's famous example, which comes from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. You can lick the outside of a bottle, but you're not going to taste what's inside. You got to open it up and taste it. So we've got to seriously chant the holy name, not skim along the surface, snicka, snicka, ram, ram. Next. Again from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, one should beat the mind in the morning with shoes and in the evening with a broom. And how do you do that? Meditating on this verse is a good way to, this is what the fruit, this is what we're going to get. And meditating on Chanadapi Sunecha, that's a good way to beat the mind. Next. You go to a doctor. You say, Doc, I'm tired, I'm weak, I got a pain in my stomach, I got no energy. Doctor asks, well, have you been eating? No. Well, what do you expect? You know? So if we don't practice chanting the holy name, which is the very essence of Mahaprabhu's mission, we're not going to get the result. Next. For the seed to grow, it must have soil, sun, and water. Cultivating the qualities listed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are prerequisites for pure chanting. It's the process in a nutshell. Next. So we'll recap. We're almost done. So lower than a straw in a street. These are the steps we need to practice. Next. More tolerant than the tree. Next. Ready to offer all respects to others while expecting no respect for oneself. Next. In such a state of mind, chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Next. So Krishna reciprocates with a clean heart. That was we were talking about Gundicha Marjana when they cleaned the Jagannath temple, and the analogy Mahaprabhu makes, if you clean the temple, then you can put the deity there. So if you clean your heart, Krishna will want to sit in your heart. So Prabhupada, this is our famous Jayananda, the founder of the Ratha Yatra in San Francisco. This one is in New York, the last, when Prabhupada was the last Ratha Yatra. So anyway, just quickly, the purity of the heart. Jayananda was a smart guy. He graduated from San Jose State with a master's in, I think, mechanical or structural engineering. I forget. He was a smart guy. But when he went to get his Gayatri mantra from Prabhupada, to show him how to chant it, he froze. It's, as we've all seen, sometimes devotees forget the four regulative principles. They don't know which way to offer their obeisances. Devotees just, because it's a big moment, and they freeze. So he went in, and he couldn't remember the mantras. The thread got all completely entangled. Prabhupada untangled it. He tangled it up again when he tried to chant. Prabhupada finally said, "You are hopeless." Imagine if your spiritual masters, you're hopeless. But then Prabhupada said, "But you are so sincere, whatever you chant, Krishna will accept." So that Krishna's attracted by that. He's not attracted. There's the story of, Vidura? And who was was it Duryodhana? Yeah. And he went to the house. Duryodhana offered all kinds of fancy cooking and menus. Krishna wouldn't take a glass of water. And he went to Vidura's house. Vidura was so ecstatic in love of God, he got so bewildered that when he brought out some bananas, he had thrown away the bananas and brought the peels. And Krishna took a bite of one of the peels. He was very happy because it was, patram pushpam pala, yome bhakta priyachate. It was saturated with devotion. Okay, next. So we want Krishna to place his feet in our heart. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the nature of our heart? Prabhupada said, where do you find crows? Amoga, where do you find a crow? Where do you find a swan? They're both birds. Hey, wait a minute. Do you find them together? Okay, where do you find a swan? Nice, clean, serene. So the point is, we want Krishna to place his feet in our heart. That heart has to be clean. Next. So the highest truth revealed, the sublime process to reveal it. So Mahaprabhu has given the highest truth, the pure Krishna prema, perfection of yoga, perfection of samadhi, the highest state of happiness. He's given this, the goal, the status, whatever it is, the highest truth revealed. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also gives, as manifest in this simple sutra, the process for realizing it. You can know the goal, but if you don't know how to get there, what's the use? You got to have the process. You got to know the goal and have the process. And Mahaprabhu gives that. Next. So, yeah, I guess we're almost done. If we fall into a well, may it never happen to you, but if you fall into a dry well, what do you need? Somebody's got to lower a rope or a ladder. Okay, all right, that's necessary. But is it sufficient? Other than Dravida, is it sufficient? What has to happen? You got to grab on. And Govardhan just reminded me, when Prabhupada was in South India, it was a Pandal program, as he was leaving, a gentleman offered dandavats, grabbed Prabhupada's feet and said, "Save me, save me." What was Prabhupada's response? I can save you by the process of Krishna consciousness. I can save you, but you have to do the work. People say, I've been saved by Jesus. But if you read the Bible, Jesus says, he gives the Sermon on the Mount. He explains very clearly what you have. He says that, I don't want to take my time, but when he saved the prostitute at the well, Mary Magdalene, she was sinful. She tested him. She said, "Who's my husband?" Jesus' response, it's right there in the Bible. Jesus' response, "Oh, you have many husbands," which is a polite way of saying you're a prostitute. So he knew who she was. She opens up her heart. There's a whole conversation. She surrenders. And Jesus says, "You're forgiven, but do not sin again." Yeah. So there's the process. You can't just always zap, "I'm saved." So the rope is lowered, but you have to grab onto it. We have to do the work next. The choice is ours. We can keep running on a wheel, around and around and around, or we can get off. I was talking about those thoroughbred horses. You get a horse, because we've got some guests here, and it's a good point. And it happens. It's a fact. They got all the horses lined up there at Del Mar or wherever it is, Belmont Stakes, Kentucky Derby. Ding, they ring the bell. Zoom, the horses take off, right? Every now and then you get a horse, doesn't run. The bell rings, and they all take off. Horse says, "No, I'm done." Why? I'm going to run in a big circle with some fool on my back whipping and kicking me, and I wind up in the same place. I get the same bag of oats. Whether I run or don't run, I'm done. And they say it happens. I forget they have a name for them, but that's it. They've seen the light, more or less. And they say once a horse comes to that conclusion, you'll never get him to race again. It's not like, well, I had an off day. Okay, I'm rested. I'll be ready for the Kentucky Derby. No, they're done. You can use them for breeding. It's because they're a good horse. But other than that, they're done. So when one sees the light chasing madly, there's no result. Okay, next. So we stay the course, and success is guaranteed. There's no question about it. You apply yourself, it works. Next. And, well, that's it. We lost the last picture, but that's all right. All right, Prabhus, thank you for sitting so patiently. I think we're not too bad on time. All glories to Prabhupada. Charnadapi Suniche. No.